You're listening to No Suck Saturday on the AM Update.
Well, welcome back to another edition of No Suck Saturday. I'm Aaron, joined as always by my beautiful Bella. And for the first time ever, Bella, we have an in-studio audience. Everybody named Ben, say ah.
No,
Ben, say hi to everybody.
Hi.
There you go. How's it going, buddy?
How you doing?
Think about wakes up.
Okay. And of course, Abby is here as well. She's just kind of
Think
chilling.
about wakes up.
Yeah, chilling like a villain. So we have 5 stories we think objectively do not suck, along with another edition installment of our study of C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. 5 stories we think objectively don't suck. I told you earlier this week about the astronauts who were rescued and made splashdown in the Gulf of America thanks to SpaceX. They were actually able to come back home after being delayed for about 9 months. Well, earlier this week, some of those same astronauts were interviewed by CBS News, and I don't think CBS News was prepared for what these astronauts had to say.
We're all the product of our life experiences, and this extended business trip of yours certainly qualifies. What is your life lesson or takeaway from these 9 months in space?
Well, in answer to your question, I can tell you honestly, my feeling on all of this goes back to my faith. It's bound in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He is working out his plan and his purposes for his glory throughout all of humanity, and how that plays into our lives is significant and important. And however that plays out, and I am content because I understand that. I understand that he's at work in all things. Some things are for the good. Go to Hebrews chapter 11. Some things look to us to be not so good, but it's all working out for his good for those that will believe. And that's the answer. So
those of us here on Earth are used to hearing that from like athletes. I feature all those clips all the time. But think about this. That is astronaut Butch Wilmore. He's been stranded in a very claustrophobic space, no pun intended, for the last 9 months. For much of that period, no clue when he was actually coming home. The fact that he can say what you just heard there with a completely straight face and absolutely genuine tone is pretty amazing. What's your first story?
Yeah, that's a really great story. Really great testimony. My first story comes from Louisiana, where Big Brothers Big Sisters is returning to New Orleans 20 years after Hurricane Katrina. I know, right? So as many of you know, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a mentor organization, and this is where adults are paired with kids to serve as a role model figure and to do activities with the kids. Nationally, the program serves approximately 400,000 kids, with about 55% of them living below the poverty line.
Wow.
But there are 30,000 kids on the waiting list across the country, so clearly volunteers are needed. And after Hurricane Katrina, the program was shut down, but it is being relaunched, and so far they've already made 15 matches. Interesting, the CEO of the greater New Orleans area noted that there's a 7% increase in black men volunteering to be a Big Brother.
That's incredible.
Which is a critical demographic for the program. Just really cool to see that program coming back to an area that so clearly needs it, and to see so many men that are willing to step up and fill that Big Brother role.
That is awesome.
Needed. So,
what a great
good
sign.
for them.
What a great sign, too. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Of course, March Madness has started. It is underway. There are 4 teams this year in March Madness who are making their March Madness debut. That would be the University of California, San Diego University. Okay, that's a university.
Yep.
I'm gonna have you guess their mascots here in just a little bit.
Oh boy.
So this is not San Diego State University. This is University of California, San Diego. SIU Edwardsville, which I believe is Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. The University of Nebraska, Omaha, and the High Point University. Those are 4 teams, 4 universities making their debuts in March Madness this year. So hats off to them. That's a really cool experience for all of those players, those entire programs. All right, UC San Diego. What do you think their mascot is?
Spartan.
Almost. The Tritons. The Tritons.
Cool.
I'm guessing the Tritons, something nautical there, so that kind of makes sense. Okay, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. What do you think their mascot is?
A dog?
Let me double check that it actually is Southern Illinois University.
Before we offend all of their alumni.
Yeah, no, it's Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, Illinois. It is The Cougars.
Cougars.
The Cougars.
Okay.
All right, University of Nebraska, Omaha.
A bird?
The Mavericks, they're actually the second Omaha University to make the tournament. Of course, Creighton is in the tournament.
Yeah.
And University of Nebraska, Omaha. And then the High Point Panthers. High Point, I think, is a university in North Carolina.
Okay.
So, congrats to those programs for making their first trips to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. What's your next story?
All right. Well, my next one comes from England, where a grocery delivery driver saved a woman's life. So, Leandro... Oh gosh, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry, sir. Leandro Pintodontis came to a customer's door and knocked, and no one answered, but he noticed a TV was on, so he just thought she must have been somewhere else in the house. He left the groceries on the step and was about to turn away when he said, "God made me go back to the window." And when he looked in the window, he found the woman unconscious on the floor. He called EMS and they took her to the hospital, and it turned out that she was a diabetic and her blood sugar had dropped. So if he hadn't found her, she could have died.
That's incredible.
But what makes this even crazier, and like Leandro said, more clear that God was behind all of this, was he wasn't even scheduled to work that night. Someone else was supposed to have this delivery, this shift, but he had traded with someone at the last minute. But yeah, while she was being checked out by paramedics, Leandro went ahead and put all of her groceries away. And while he was in the hospital, he visited her and brought her some flowers.
That's incredible.
And now, deservedly, he has been nominated for a Service Superstar Award by his employer.
That's incredible.
Yeah, what a cool guy, and crazy to see God's hand at work in these small things.
Yeah, I love these stories. You do a really good job of finding these stories. I have no idea what their faith background is at all.
Yeah.
But these stories of common grace, just that God works in ways that we cannot understand through people who you might not expect, just random people.
Exactly.
Stories of common grace are always really cool.
Yeah.
All right, last good news story. This might be the most favorite, at least so far this year, favorite good news story that maybe you have that I have selected. I'm sorry.
What?
Maybe your favorite story that I have selected so far. It is spring now.
It is spring. Hallelujah.
Thursday was the March equinox, also known as the vernal equinox. That's when the Earth on the subsolar point appears to leave the southern hemisphere and cross the celestial equator, heading northwards as seen from Earth. There are some notable things that have happened on March 20th throughout history. First, just 10 years ago, 2015, a solar eclipse, equinox, and a supermoon all occurred on the same day.
Wow.
Then in 1995, the Japanese cult Aum Shinrikyo carried out a sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway, killing 13. In 1985, Libby Riddles became the first woman to win the 1,135-mile Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race. And back 210 years ago, Napoleon escaped Elba and entered Paris on March 20th with a regular army of 140,000 and a volunteer force of 200,000, beginning his 100 days rule. Do you know what all of those stories have in common?
What?
No, I'm asking.
They all happened on the 20th?
Well, beyond that.
They were important.
Okay, I was hoping I would be able to find some sort of thread between all of those stories, but I'm not able to. Sorry about that.
That was fun. It was like this day in history. That's a good time.
All right, when we come back, we'll continue our study, book 2 in C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. That's coming up next.
This is No Suck Saturday. We'll be right back.
And of course, that raises a very big question. If a good God made the world, why has it gone wrong? And for many years, I simply refused to listen to the Christian Answers question because I kept on feeling whatever you say and however clever your arguments are, isn't it much simpler and easier to say that the world was not made by any intelligent power? After all, your arguments simply are a complicated attempt to avoid the obvious. But then that drew me back into another difficulty. My argument against God, C.S. Lewis writes, was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? That is chapter 1 of book 2, What Christians Believe, in C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. Is that Ben?
That's Ben.
Let's pretend that didn't happen.
Can we read that again?
I just did. Yeah, I just did.
Whew.
Live studio audience. Never know what's going to happen.
Oh, they got gas.
Let's ask this question. So the second question everyone must face is to decide what kind of God to believe in. Some, including pantheists, believe that God is beyond good and evil. What's the fundamental problem of pantheism? Do you want me to take this first?
Sure.
So the fundamental problem with pantheism, which is that God is everything and everywhere and at all things and all times, is that even things we classify as bad than our God.
Yep.
C.S. Lewis writes, of cancer and slums,
Right.
a pantheist will say, well, that is God and that is God. That's obviously just not true.
Right.
And of course, what I just read, the excerpt to begin this segment with, you have to contend with, the law of the Lord is written on our hearts. Even the atheist believes that there is such thing as good and evil, but they are never able to fully explain where that comes from.
Right.
Richard Dawkins, there's a clip of him saying, talking about the proto-morality of a chimpanzee troop. That's the crazy thing. Oh, we were just evolved to get this sense. Are you sure about that?
Right.
Are you really sure about that? And by what standard are you basing your good and evil? You can't just, it's a standard. It's a metaphysical thing. It exists outside of the material. So the fundamental problem pantheists have is that there is obviously good and evil, a rule that is outside of time and space, outside of the physical, things that you can see and feel and touch. There is good and evil. But pantheists believe that even the bad things are God, and God is good and bad, and outside of good and bad, it makes no sense. It falls apart very quickly. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, no, that was very well said. Say, this world is filled with sin and pain and heartbreak, and we as Christians hold to the fact that heaven is the opposite of that we know there's a place where none of that exists. So we have to know that there is a difference between how we see it and how the pantheists see it, because God is not those broken things. God hates the broken things, and that's the whole crux of being human and of experiencing life on earth, and that's what makes the reward of heaven so sweet.
Indeed.
I want to read that.
Let's finish with this. C.S. Lewis writes, in the very act of trying to prove that God did not exist, in other words, that the whole of reality was senseless, I found I was forced to assume that one part of reality, namely my idea of justice, was full of sense. Consequently, atheism turns out to be too simple. If the whole universe has no meaning, we should never have found out that this has no meaning. Just as if there were no light in the universe and therefore no creatures with eyes, we should never know it was dark. Dark would be a word without meaning.
Yeah.
That'll do it for our study this week of C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. When we come back, we'll have our highlight of the week as well as our question of the week. That's next. All right, back for one final segment on No Sucks Saturday. This final segment, we talk about our highlight of the week as well as our question of the week. And my highlight of the week, got a couple of days off from the day job. That was very nice, and not that I have a job that's physically demanding of me. It's just nice to have some time off, nevertheless, because it's already been a pretty busy year so far, especially the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it was nice to have some time off, and then got a big project on the horizon, on the near horizon, on the day job. So good to have a little bit of calm before that storm, and just be able to sit at home, get a few projects done, spend a lot of time, especially with Ben. I know he likes that, and I like that as well. And watch a little bit of basketball. That's been fun too. So, and just, of course, getting to hang out with you. Yeah, I was getting to that. That was a given, and getting to that, but getting to hang out with my beautiful Bella. We are watching the Marvel movies all over again. We had gotten through the first 6 or 7 pretty quickly in pretty good order. Kind of surprised me. Yeah. And then Captain America, Winter Soldier, we had to watch that in 3 or 4 sittings.
3 nights.
3 nights it took us. So hopefully tonight we'll get started on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Yes.
And that'll be a lot of fun. It was, Guardians of the Galaxy were superheroes that I'd never heard of before the Marvel movies came out, and now I love them.
Mm-hmm. They're some of my favorites.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it has a lot to do with the music, the soundtrack in those
I would
movies.
Say that's a big part of it.
And Chris Pratt is great too, as Star-Lord. So, so looking forward to that. And it's been fun to have a few days off. What's your highlight of the week?
Well, I mean, honestly, that's my highlight. It's just nice to have you home for a couple extra days just to have another adult in the house with the children.
Mm-hmm.
It's just helpful. Means I get to go to the bathroom by myself and get some projects done without a whole gaggle.
Yes.
Yeah. Kids following me. And I don't know. I enjoy March Madness. I do. Like, it's fun to fill out the brackets. I have no idea. I don't follow college basketball at all, but I have fun putting the brackets together. And honestly, I get kind of invested in it. Like, there was an upset like a couple days ago, and I was like devastated for the sake of my basket, but I don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean, we don't have Abby filling out a bracket quite yet, but we do have Ben filling out a bracket. And Ben, who did you have winning the whole thing? I think you had Purdue.
Correct.
Yeah, you had Purdue, the Boilermakers. Can you say Boilermakers?
Boilermakers.
Yes, you have Purdue winning the whole thing. I think you just like saying Boilermakers, and I can't blame you, because that is a fun word to say. It's also been nice over the past week. Now, not when I had days off, but I mean, here in Iowa, in March, it's really uncommon to have like 80-degree days.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of those recently. I mean, it felt like summer.
It did.
So that's been a lot of fun too.
Yes,
all right, what is our question of the week, Bella?
Our question of the week is, what movie do you never want to watch again?
I have a answer right off the top of my head.
Wow. Go for it.
And I need to remember the name of the movie. Oh, why don't you answer this one first while I look up the name of the movie? I know what I'm talking about. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. But it's a movie that was really, well, there's actually two that come off the top of my head. One is The Joker.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Great movie. Never want to watch again. The one that I thought of off the top of my head, though, immediately when you said this, I mean, from a film, story, cinematography standpoint, it's just fantastic, but it's so intense the whole way through. Like, you feel like you've gotten run over by a train by the end of this movie.
What's that?
Is The Revenant. And that's the one that Leo DiCaprio, I believe, finally won his Oscar
he did.
for.
Yeah, with the bear.
Yes, getting mauled by a bear. So that is one off the top of my head. Love it. Never want to watch it again.
Yeah. Okay. Those are good. I can see both of those. Mine is any of the Final Destination movies, but specifically the second one.
Oh yeah.
I watched that when I was, I would have probably been in junior high. I think like it was shown on TV or something, and it was very interesting. I was captivated, but the whole idea is just that these people cheat death and then they basically get hunted down by death and then die in like horrible, grisly ways.
Yeah, they're
just awful. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I never want to watch that ever again.
There's a clip from one of the Final Destination, I don't know which one it was, but one of the Final Destination movies that went viral on X not that long ago. It was them driving on a highway.
That's the second movie.
That's the second one?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the one that
I was
started
like,
it.
holy cow, this is intense. What is this?
Oh, it's awful. There was a log. There was a guy the guy who died with his hand stuck in the garbage disposal. That one was horrible. Someone got chopped up in a wood chopper. Like, they're very creative ways to die. It was just too much for me. I would much rather watch a good like psychological thriller or something, not death.
All right, let's end on death.
That happy note.
That'll do it for another edition of No Suck Saturday. Thank you for hopping along. For everybody else, if you missed any of AM Update this week, we've got Week in Review coming out tomorrow morning and fresh AM Update starting again on Monday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. For Bella, I'm Aaron. See you then.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to No Suck Saturday.